like a symptom of a larger issue.
Okay. Got it.
This is Bharat FM.
बजेगा भारत, झूमेगा भारत.
ये है भारत FM.
बजेगा भारत, झूमेगा भारत.
Hi. So my name is Varshini, and I'm the host of Things We Carry, which is a collaboration between SAAHAS for Cause and Bharat FM. If you're interested in learning more about the incredible work that SAAHAS for Cause does with South Asian immigrants, please check them out at saahasforcause.org. And the spelling is S like Sam, A, two A's, HAS for cause.org. So a little bit about me. I'm Tamil American, and I grew up primarily in Los Angeles, California. So yes, coming to you live from LA. And I'm gonna let my guest today introduce where she's from and everything about herself as well. I currently work in tech with content and creators on a daily basis, and my most favorite thing is to get to work with creative minds. My goal is to just keep sharing people's stories and their unique perspectives in any way that I can, and just make content creation and elevation opportunities as democratic and as accessible as possible, because I think there are so many beautiful, unique stories and perspectives that we don't get to hear on a daily basis. My reason for creating Things We Carry in collaboration with SAAHAS for Cause and Bharat FM is because it's about the rituals, patterns, and practices that we inherit from our families, our communities, our religions, our cultures, and the ones that we choose to carry on, and the ones that we choose to completely forgo or redefine because they honestly don't serve us anymore. And this is because I'm sure so many of us have parents, families, communities that pass so much down to us, and it's in the hopes of keeping us closer to our roots and keeping traditions alive. But a lot of times these mindsets kind of hold us back, and they don't help us move forward and live our best lives. If you want to reach out to me on Instagram to talk about the show or be on the show, you can find me at Varshini_INI. And I'm so excited today to have my first guest. She is a dear friend and an exceptional photographer. I'm going to play some of her work while she speaks. It's Vinuthna Garidipuri. She is immensely talented, and she brings so much of herself to her work, which is why and how she produces the most stunning images I've ever seen. So I'm just going to let herself introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. My name is Vinuthna Garidipuri. I am an editorial wedding photographer based in Houston, Texas. I've been photographing for the past 10 years and have been a wedding photographer for the past around 4 or 5. And I primarily do South Asian weddings and also do a lot of editorial work with a lot of high-end fashion, lots of boutique Indian designers, and also just experimenting on a day-to-day basis. I am based in Houston, but I have been doing weddings all around the US and around the country. This year is different, but I am thankful that I have been able to do a couple of very intimate, beautiful weddings this year. So it's been an amazing journey so far, and I can't wait to talk to Varshini about everything that we have in store for you today.
I am so excited too. Can you please, first of all, tell us how people can get in contact with you? Plug all of your socials,
Yes.
Plug your website. We need to hear it all.
Yes, for sure. So you can contact me through my website, vinuthnagaripuri.com. I'm also on Instagram and at Vinuthna Garidipuri. So both of those will, take you to my website, and you can contact me, DM me, anything, your questions. Happy to answer anything regarding photography, regarding anything I do, any of my services. So yeah, feel free to reach out to me.
And I can personally vouch for her work. She recently took pictures of me, completely random. Images of myself I have ever seen. Like, the talent, unmatched, unparalleled. But because you're such a talented photographer, I would love to know, how did you get into this? Like, where did this come from? How did you get started? I want to hear the origin story.
Yeah, I would say the origin story was, back like 10, 11 years ago, our family and I went on a vacation to Alaska. And, we're all take photos, like big on, documenting our lives so we can look back on them. But that specific trip, we bought a really nice SLR camera, and my dad kind of let me take on the responsibility of, reading the manual and like figuring out, the details of how to operate a camera. And I'm really thankful that I got to, take on that responsibility and become like our family's photographer for that trip. And it, became, that whole trip was just taking pictures of my mom, dad, brother, myself, the beautiful landscapes of Alaska. It was Anchorage actually. And then from there, I just stuck with it and, started like taking photos of my friends, taking photos in high school, taking photos, just like I would take my camera everywhere.
Yeah.
But it started becoming more serious when I was in college, and I, did almost a whole 8 months in Milan, studied there, and worked in, got to work in fashion. Was very serendipitous. Went to study finance there, but it's just Milan is the fashion capital of the world, and I had the opportunity to photograph really, really awesome things there. One of the most iconic things that happen there every year is Milan Fashion Week, and the neighboring countries have London Fashion Week and Milan, Paris Fashion Week. So I got to photograph all those amazing and once in a lifetime kind of opportunity events, and kept, got a very, started kind of my journey in editorial photography there. And yeah, and then from there, it became like pretty serious, I would say. And then, it's still, I also, try to juggle multiple different things in my day-to-day life, just so I can diversify myself. But I would say I would mostly identify myself as a photographer more than anything else. So
that's like core to your identity.
Yeah.
And the fact that you're Telugu American, and you have incredibly supportive, wonderful parents who, we've talked about this before, maybe they don't like get exactly what you do or like the intricacies of it, but it sounds like they just appreciate your work and just push you to keep being better every single day. Can you tell me a little bit about like your parents, their story? Did they immigrate here? Like, I want to know more about them.
Yeah, for sure. So my parents came to the United States in 1999, 2000 time period. Before that, we were living in Taiwan. So I came here when I was literally like 1 or 2 years old. I was born in India. I was born in Tirupati, which is in South India. There's a really, holy pilgrimage there called Tirumala. So we go there every time we visit, like 2 or 3 times, because it's like my hometown, basically. But yeah, so we came as a family to the U.S. 1999, 2000. Moved to Colorado, started the American dream. I was an only child at that point, and then my brother was born later. But we came here. My dad is in tech, so he got to come here and work and do his magic in tech in the United States.
As many of us seem to do. So
as many of us seem to do. It's awesome. Really glad that was a segue into my life here and how I was brought up and everything. So that was kind of when they came here, and it was an interesting time.
Yeah, and I want to know, coming here so young, and your parents obviously, came here as parents with a small daughter and then a son. What is their relationship to preserving their culture, and how did they kind of impart that to you and your brother? Was it from like a cultural perspective? Was it from a religious perspective? Like, what was their relationship to that? Because I think we see a lot of South Asian families move here, and it's not, I'm going to split it into a binary and say it's kind of one of two ways. They either really want you to hold on to it, or they just kind of go the other direction where they're like, assimilate because it's the easiest thing to do. there's nothing wrong with either of them, I think. My family personally, at least, by way of some background, is my parents tried to keep us really in touch with things, but also they really took stock of how they were raised and what quote unquote held them back and what they wanted to be different for me and my sister, especially being two girls in a very South Asian community and town where we grew up. I think they wanted to make sure that we grew up extremely vocal, extremely independent, things like that. So what was your parents' approach to raising you both and keeping you tied to your roots?
I mean, they did a great job. I think for us, most importantly, was they, gave us the resources and kind of exposed us to the religion, the culture, and, always speaking the language at home. I can speak Telugu fluently because I've always spoke it since I was a kid. I think my parents that was a big thing, like keeping the language intact no matter what. And obviously, like we'll learn English on top of anything else, right? But I think for me, and I want to pass that on to the future generation too. So becoming very fluent in my language is extremely important. I unfortunately didn't learn how to read or write, but my brother did. So I'm happy that he got that. So, joining, enrolling in Telugu classes or doing Chinmay mission when we were younger, or just like little habits like waking up on the right side of the bed because anything, use your right hand, like just little cultural and nuances that were instilled in us since we were little kids. So they started off as a habit, and now, I don't think I can't, I always wake up on the right side of the bed, right? Like it's just like a habit now. So, and I have like a little Ganesha idol with me. I took it to college. Like it just starts my day off with good positive vibrations. So the little things like that, they've always they've been consistent through our lives, but nothing was ever really forced upon us. And I think I honestly really owned up to everything and always was very South Indian, very Telugu, no matter what. Like I lived here my entire life pretty much, but I would always want to listen to Telugu music in the car over everything else, right? I'm like such a hardcore South Indian, and growing up in like the Y2K era, like there was amazing, like that whole music side of the US was a really big aspect of it. But I think I still personally chose to always listen to music from Telugu or Hindi, there's just so many memories for me, going to school in the car with the cassettes in the car and listening to really popular music back in the day, and that's a sense of nostalgia that I will always have for the rest of my life. So it's just kind of who I am as well. I am so intact with my culture and my language and everything South Indian, and I think that is kind of how I've kind of brought that into my photography world and space, and really tried to show off the beautiful culture that India has to offer and Asia has to offer. So
before I get into that side of things, I just want to say the Y2K music era, I completely feel that. In my car on the way to school, my dad was playing Kanye's College Dropout album. And simultaneously, we had Sudha Raghunathan Carnatic CDs. But
literally.
I was also listening to the entire Jeans soundtrack and
literally Jeans, Boys,
oh my god,
just the era on 90s music, insane.
So
Kanu Kunde, I like the whole soundtracks of anything in the 90s. I still listen to it till date, and it just makes me feel really happy because it really reminds me of my childhood. And I thankfully had a wonderful childhood. So
and I think it's amazing that our parents made it so seamless for us almost to just have that incorporated into our daily lives. These are small habits that you said that you still practice. Like me, when I start driving, my mom always says, even if you have to reverse out of the garage, you kind of have to put it in drive and take an inch forward in your car before you go backwards. So I do that religiously, quote unquote religiously. I feel like it makes me feel, like you said, safer, more comfortable, just good vibes and good energy. And these are pretty innocuous, inconsequential practices and things like that. Is there anything that's caused like slightly more serious contention in your family, or something that you're like, I want to change this. This doesn't really work with me. Has there been anything like that?
Yeah, plenty of things for sure. Plenty of things that I will not be taking forward to the next generation. I think one of the main things, and it can be slightly controversial, but I personally believe that being a woman and the stigma around like menstruation cycles within India and like how it relates to religion is something that I particularly don't align with, and like my values and my beliefs. Just because I've kind of broken it down in a very logical way. If us women are, if for the first time, especially in South India, it's like extremely celebrated when a female starts her period, right? So that's like a really big celebration people throw. But then like, it's like every month it happens. And it is sometimes like, viewed as, impure. There's just so much, there's so many thoughts around it, but my personal thoughts are, if we're celebrating it and it is the reason how life is being brought to the world, like that is, without that aspect of a woman's life, that nothing else is really possible to carry on life. So why is it so there's so much stigma around it and so much like negative energy when it comes to like a woman can't pray when she's menstruating, a woman can't, there's some people are like very, very intense about it. Like no one, we're not, thankfully, but I know some people that are like, if I'm, some families, I guess, like if you're menstruating, do not enter the kitchen. Like it's, not here, in India too, like there's very extreme levels of how that's taken. And I mean, to me, I personally don't understand, like, I know where it comes from, and I know in the religious aspect of it, in the cultural aspect of it, I totally know where these are coming from, but I do not align with them.
I also think it's like a symptom of a larger issue of how, I guess, women are viewed and treated in our society, in our religion, in our culture. I think we're celebrated as goddesses. We're celebrated for fertility. We're celebrated for motherhood. And I think like at the drop of a hat for 1 week every month, I'm the same person, but now I'm a bad person. Now I'm someone who can't go do certain things,
like I don't have access. I can't enter into the puja room. Like how does that work? Right? Like if we're all, if God created us, is kind of like where I'm coming from, like that kind of logic. I'm just saying it shouldn't differentiate us.
Yeah.
It's just my personal, I know everyone has their own views about it, but I know personally a lot of millennials and Gen Z individuals growing up and have this sort of stigma around that kind of clashes with religion. Do you feel the same way that I do? Like, how does this differentiate us from, if I want to genuinely pray, like, why can't I? And like, how is it stopping us? I know there are a lot of explanations around it. People come from an Ayurvedic standpoint, people come like a religious standpoint, but to me, logically, like, if we're celebrating it, literally when like in India, like there's a traditional baby shower, like people celebrate it like really beautifully grandly. So there's just so many aspects that it's celebrated, but the root of it happens every month, and I feel like there's so much kind of tension and stigma and discrimination around it, which I personally do not agree with, and I will not be passing that to the next generation, and I won't be teaching whether it be a son or a daughter, I won't be teaching that, because I think our bodies are our temples. So
they're really our first homes and the first way that we experience life. And I don't think that needs to be almost criminalized in some ways at all. And like you said, totally respect other people's beliefs, but the point that you really made that I really resonate with is I won't be passing this on. Like, you can do what you like and you can do what works for you. But I think making that conscious decision, because so much of our lives, so much of what we learn, so much of what is passed down is completely unconscious. We don't question it. We're like, this is how things have been done. But it's like, why? Maybe it's because I'm Aquarius, but I'm always like, why is this the way it is?
Sure.
Why do we need to put these rules on ourselves? Why do we need to, I guess, just police ourselves for being ourselves and almost like bully ourselves for just existing? And I think there's so much we could do to lessen the burden, not only on ourselves, but like you said, future generations that come in, future women that come into your family. And the point you made about, whether it's a son or a daughter that I have, both of them are going to understand this. And I think that speaks to a larger issue of how sons in Indian culture are raised and what they're taught versus what their sisters are taught. And that I could get into and just have
I could have like a whole day conversation about
that.
That is, I personally have a brother, and he's he knows everything, right? He's very progressive about things, very aware. He's just, so I'm really glad that we can have open conversations about like female menstrual cycles. Like, I've literally talked to him about a couple of hours. I was like, hey, younger brother, like, let's talk about it. Like, like, what do you think? Like, what do you think as a male and how you view this concept from the outside? So it's interesting. I won't be taking it to the next generation, but to each their own.
To each their own. And I think the point of having this show and the reason this was such a big draw for me, and I felt like working with SAAHAS for Cause and Bharat FM, was because, if even one person hears a story, if you just listen to someone and you're like, wow, yeah, that's happening in my life too, and I didn't ever realize it could be different or it could be better, or that I have options to make my life better. I think that's truly what stories and representation give us. It's options. It's different ways of living that we didn't realize were available to us.
Exactly.
Yeah. And so that's what I hope that this does. So even if literally one person takes a critical look at their life and they're like, this ends with me, I know I had to go through it. And this is something that I talk to my friends about all the time, is like, you can talk to older female relatives in your family, and maybe they've had difficult marriages. Maybe they got married when they were super, super young. And it's like, they just tell you, well, that's how it is. And they'll kind of warn you, like, this is what's coming in your life. And it's like, well, no, and I'm really sorry that you had to go through that, but it doesn't mean that I have to go through that. And that level of awareness of realizing, like, I went through something, I really struggled with it, it changed me as a person, but someone else doesn't have to go through the same thing, I think is a really liberating feeling. It takes a lot of work. It's not a switch that flips in your head. It takes a lot of unlearning, more than learning sometimes. I think the unlearning is the hardest part. And we do
it is the hardest.
So much.
And like, I live with my parents right now, and like unlearning things as I'm living with them. Some things that I don't personally take on personally that I do not align with. It's interesting. We do it in a respectful way, try to do it in a respectful way. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Yeah, it is what it is, right? So, it is what it is. So
it is what it is. It really is what it is. And you mentioned that you're seeing so many couples and just like millennial Indian people, South Asian people, through your photography work, changing things and adapting tradition and culture to fit their lives better. In your photography work and in your experience of photographing so many weddings, numerous weddings, how has this kind of manifested in those events?
It's been truly amazing to see people redefine Indian rituals and take it to, alter them to what makes sense to them, take parts that they want, do not perform parts of the ceremony that they do not agree with. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of rituals within an Indian wedding ceremony that so many of my couples just do not opt in for, that could be slightly, I would say
controversial
or like may not, really be beneficial for the women, just like things that are just not really
like
20, like So I mean, like, when a female touches the male's feet, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of meanings within that, and so I've seen people where the male also touches, like the groom also touches the bride's feet, right? So it's
Yes.
been really beautiful to see that. I've seen people bringing in their personal perspectives and how they want to live their life, and like showcasing that in front of family and friends when they're getting married. And I think it's really beautiful. And I think that is kind of the new modern millennial Indian rituals for weddings. And I've seen that pretty much at every single wedding I've done. So I think it's beautiful. I think it's take the parts that you like and add things you want, take things that you don't want, take out things you don't want. So
it's your life. You're the one who's going to be living it. You're the one who's going to be living in that marriage. And you might as well, put your stake in the ground the minute you get married and be like, here's how things are going to run. And
exactly.
That's a foreign concept that we're not taught because our mothers, our grandmothers didn't get to have these conversations most of the time with their partners. It wasn't like a normalized thing. So the fact that you get to do this now is amazing. And I think there is probably a school of thought and people listening to this who are like, these are such inconsequential problems. Like, this is like complete first world problem zone. But it's like, I live in the first world. These are problems.
These are problems. So this is baggage for so many people, right? Like, it is truly baggage. Like, there's so many rituals, even outside of weddings, like that, tend to not really be
favorable to women.
Right? So it's really important to kind of like wake up from those things. And I mean, I always look into rituals if ever I'm going to puja. I'm like, what does this mean? Like, what exactly am I kind of chanting? What is the meaning behind it? I recently attended like a Gauri puja. I'm like, what exactly is a Gauri puja? Why did the bride perform it? Like, I just wanted to know, and I really like to educate myself within these things because I do want to showcase these things for the next generation, but in a way that makes the most sense to me and is, the least problematic.
Yeah. And I think that's why also your photography is so different and completely blows anything I've ever seen out of the water. Not just because you're my friend, but genuinely you just bring so much of yourself, your personal background, your knowledge, your emotions into like every single image. Like every single image you produce is a standalone piece of art. You've been featured in places like Vogue India, in like every single person's Pinterest board. Your images have gone completely viral. You won't say it, so I'll say it. I know you're getting.
I don't like to brag, or I'm mad at it. Like I brag.
That's a separate conversation. That's a separate conversation. You absolutely must brag. Otherwise, I'll do it for you. But I think because you understand every part of the ritual, you understand the couples you're photographing, and you understand why they're changing the things they change, and you give validity, value, and weight to the way they want their wedding photographed. It's not even about you at the end of the day. You're almost like just a conduit through which they're getting to showcase themselves. And you're immensely talented and wonderful. And I enjoyed this conversation so much. My voice was kind of shaky at the beginning of this, but this has truly been the best. I love you so much, and I love talking to you. So thank you so much for being on.
Of course.
Any closing thoughts before I wrap us up?
I mean, I think, it is up to our generation to take on things that will be beneficial for like society going forward. Taking things like, kind of shying away from things like caste. Dowry still exists in India. So all these like little, not little, these are big issues that are
big issues.
Yeah. So I really think not just Indian Americans here, but our people back in their homeland, just some food for thought, like really just analyze where these things came from and, figure out for yourself if you want to take this forward to the next generation or not.
Critical thinking is
thinking.
And with that, thank you all so, so much for tuning in. This was so much fun. I am so excited to keep doing this. And a huge shout out to Bharat FM and also SAAHAS for Cause. If you are going through a difficult situation, especially if you're a woman and you are being singled out in your family or in an abusive situation, please contact them at info@saahasforcause.org or check them out on their website, saahasforcause.org. Thank you so much. Love you lots. Talk to you soon. Bye.
This is Bharat FM.
बजेगा भारत झूमेगा भारत.
ये है भारत FM.
बजेगा भारत झूमेगा भारत.